Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Right now, practically every single organization is feeling this immense, almost crushing pressure to adopt artificial intelligence. We're constantly seeing new tools pop up, vendors making these incredibly bold claims, and let's be honest, businesses are just terrified of being left behind. But when you look at the reality on the ground, there is this really stark contrast. While some organizations are out there using AI to save time and boost customer service, a massive number of businesses are dumping a fortune into tools, training, and pilot projects that yield absolutely zero results. It's this incredibly frustrating cycle that just eats up time and money.
And that brings us to a really profound realization from our source material today. When these AI initiatives crash and burn, we are so incredibly quick to blame the software, right? We immediately assume the AI just wasn't smart enough or the platform was too clunky. But the truth? The difference between a wildly successful AI deployment and a total disaster is rarely the technology itself. It's almost always our very own approach to implementing it. Which naturally leads us to the million-dollar question. I mean, if it's not the tech's fault, why do so many of these highly anticipated big-budget AI projects just completely flatline before they even get off the starting block? What is actually going on behind this massive failure rate?
To solve that mystery, we really have to look at the sheer chaos of how these projects are usually born. You've got projects launching simply because someone wanted to buy a shiny new tool with literally zero clear business objective. You've got totally unrealistic expectations that AI is just going to magically fix everything overnight. Then, pile on top of that poor underlying data and staff who are totally excluded from the whole process. Think about it. If your business records are a mess and your employees are expected to just magically use a new tool without understanding why it's there or how it helps them, they're going to avoid it. Or worse, they'll create workarounds. Your project is literally doomed before the ink on the contract is even dry. All this chaos perfectly illustrates the absolute biggest trap of all, the flawed technology-first mindset versus the much more pragmatic business-first approach. Look, one of the most common mistakes a leadership team makes is sitting around a boardroom table and asking, okay, which AI tool should we buy? That is the absolute wrong question. The technology should support your objective. It should never, ever define it. The right question, really the only question you should be starting with is, what business problem are we actually trying to solve? So the absolutely crucial point here is how we actually define AI in a corporate setting. Let's slow down and really absorb this for a second. Artificial intelligence is a business tool. It is not a business strategy. Buying a fancy AI product does not automatically improve your organizational performance, any more than buying a premium set of hammers automatically builds you a better house. Like any other investment, it has to be deployed to solve a very real, very tangible business problem. And to do that, you need strong objectives. If your goal is simply to use AI, well, it is completely impossible to measure your success. How do you even know when you've achieved that? You don't. Instead, you need targeted objectives. Things like reducing the time needed to produce a weekly report from 4 hours to 2, or dramatically improving first response times for customer inquiries, or cutting down on repetitive data entry to improve consistency. These are highly specific, they give your team crystal clear direction, and most importantly, they let you definitively measure whether the project is actually working. To actually get there, you need a solid framework to prepare your organization. Before a single software license is ever purchased, you have to review 4 fundamental pillars. Leadership needs to agree on the budget and the expected outcome. Processes need a thorough review. People need practical support and training on how this actually relates to their daily work, not just a bunch of generic tech jargon. And technology means asking the basic questions, like, can your current systems even connect to this new AI tool securely?
I absolutely love this next point regarding the processes pillar. Automating an inefficient process does not make it good. It may simply allow the business to do the wrong thing faster. It's a bit of dark corporate humor, but man, it is incredibly true. If your internal workflow is a complete mess, slapping AI on top of it is just going to accelerate that mess. You absolutely must understand, simplify, and document a process manually before you ever unleash an AI tool on it.
Okay, let's see how this actually plays out in the real world with a great practical example from our source material. Imagine a small engineering firm. They are just drowning in about 40 customer email inquiries every single day. Each message needs to be manually reviewed, categorized, and passed over to the right department. During busy periods, this bottleneck creates massive delays and, understandably, frustrated customers. Now, the firm could have tried to automate their entire customer service department, but that adds massive risk and complexity, right?
Instead, they started with one very clear objective: reduce the time spent sorting those routine inquiries. After bringing AI into the mix, the tool now categorizes the incoming messages and drafts an initial response. But here is the critical part. Real human employees review and send the final reply. They completely solved a specific bottleneck without removing the essential human oversight their clients rely on. It's a much better use of staff time, not a total job replacement. Let's look at another mini-narrative, this time featuring a professional services firm. The directors there were really feeling the heat, constantly watching competitors boast about their shiny new AI tech. But before they just threw money at the wall to see what stuck, they actually stopped and reviewed how their staff were spending their time. It turned out their highly paid consultants were losing hours every single week just drafting routine meeting notes, internal reports, and standard proposals. The contrast here is something we see all the time. The initial temptation for this firm was to buy several advanced AI tools and roll them out to all employees across the entire organization, literally overnight. But the reality of their eventual success came from fighting that urge. They ran just one tightly controlled pilot project. Staff used AI solely to prepare first drafts of meeting summaries and proposals, and every single draft was reviewed by an employee. The result? After 3 months, document quality became way more consistent. Consultants suddenly had more time for actual high-value client work, and the firm's overall confidence in AI skyrocketed. Of course, you have to realize that none of these successes happen safely without ground rules. Because let's be totally honest, AI can and will confidently produce completely incorrect answers. It can misunderstand context, or even accidentally leak private data if it's used carelessly. That's exactly why a simple but firm governance policy is an absolute must. You don't need some massive legal textbook, just clear, practical rules. What tools are actually approved? What customer data is strictly prohibited from being used? You need clear review and approval requirements, basic security expectations, and simple escalation procedures. This protects the whole business without creating a ton of unnecessary red tape.
So, how do you actually know if your safe, well-planned pilot is working? Well, you measure it based strictly on your initial objective. If your aim was to save time, you literally need to measure the time saved. If the aim was better service, you track those response times and customer feedback scores. Success has to be defined clearly in advance. And here's a really vital takeaway for us. If no improvement is identified, that doesn't automatically mean the project is a total failure. It's simply a signal to review the process. Maybe the staff just need a bit more support, or maybe that specific tool wasn't the right fit. Measurement drives informed decisions.
Okay, so how do you actually get the ball rolling? Let's dive into the practical playbook for getting started. We've established that you definitely don't need to transform your whole organization on day one. A suitable first project has some very specific characteristics. It absolutely must be useful to your staff, it must be low risk, it must be easy to measure, and it needs to be strictly limited in scope. Here is your step-by-step path for a low-risk, gradual expansion strategy. First up, define the exact problem and get everyone to agree on what the outcome should look like. Second, identify the risks, like data privacy, and choose your tool carefully. Third, train your users, and I mean really train them, not just on the buttons to click, but on how this changes their daily workflow. Fourth, run that small, controlled pilot. And finally, measure the results and decide your next steps. Continue, adjust, or pull the plug. This methodical approach drastically speeds up your organizational learning while completely protecting the business from those massive, costly failures we talked about earlier. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to focus on this incredibly powerful takeaway. Businesses do not need to become world-class AI experts overnight to extract real, tangible value from these tools. The organizations achieving the very best results are the ones starting with a single, isolated problem, measuring the outcome, and building on what actually works. A small, functional improvement that reliably saves your team just 1 hour each day is infinitely more valuable than a massive, chaotic tech overhaul that burns through your budget but never actually crosses the finish line. So I'll leave you with this final, slightly provocative thought to take back to your own teams. When you look at your current AI strategy, ask yourself honestly, are you trying to transform your whole entire organization overnight? Or are you ready to adopt a business-first mindset and just save your team 1 hour today? Find your first small win, define your objective, and start building some real value. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.